Checking audio at 1, 2, 3, 4 for YouTube. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we're checking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Plan Commission meeting to order for May 29th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Crystal, could you, let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please, Crystal.
Okay, Commissioner Grimmer?
Here.
Commissioner Krenke?
Here.
Commissioner Merrick?
Here.
Commissioner Jahinski?
Here.
Commissioner Hausman?
Here.
Commissioner Schultz?
Here.
Mayor Aker?
Here.
And then Scott Hosinger?
Here.
And Amy Barrows? Here. And excused is Dan Cahalan.
Great, thank you, everyone. Now, citizens' comments for items that are on the consent agenda. So this would be items 6A, B, and C. Is there any comments for those items? Going once? Okay, citizens' comments for consent agenda items are now closed. Need a possible action motion for the minutes from our April meeting.
I'll move to approve the April 2024 meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, we have minutes approved. Yes.
I don't know if everyone heard that, but Nathan, Harrell, Faulkner, and REIC Labs Business Plan of Operation have all been approved. So if you want to leave, you can.
No, we didn't do the consent agenda.
No. I'm sorry.
That's rather presumptuous, Amy.
Jumping the gun.
Our next item is the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, so what Amy said. So Giuseppe's, Faulkner, and REIC.
Labs.
If-
Although REIC Labs, you're on the agenda later on for signage.
Not so fast. Okay, now we have a public hearing. So public hearing number 1 is for text amendments to Chapter 52, City of Delafield zoning ordinance related to planned unit developments and planned developments. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to public hearing number 1? Seeing none, citizens' comments for the public hearing and the public hearing are now closed. Item 8, citizens' comments for other items that are on the agenda at all. So any citizens wish to speak on anything else on the agenda? And we'll take them one at a time. Okay, seeing none, citizen comments for items outside the consent agenda are now closed. So 9, unfinished business. Discussion and possible action regarding the following item. DELC 0793051, 433 North Genesee Street. Owner Charles Henricks, applicant Chris Miller. Please step up. Okay, applicant is requesting feedback and to schedule a public hearing to rezone the subject property from CBD 2, Central Business District, to CBD 1, Central Business District, or to schedule a public hearing to amend the text of the zoning ordinance related to CBD 2, Central Business District, to accommodate a future office building for Miller Marriott construction. Amy, you want to introduce this? And then
Sure. Okay, so we discussed this item at last month's meeting, and Chris did give his presentation. He is proposing to rezone the property highlighted in yellow on the screen on Genesee Street, which is across the street from where we are now, from CBD 2 to CBD 1 in order to accommodate a new office facility, because he does not feel like the lot has a lot of viability with its size and location for the type of development that, for a downtown environment. So the CBD 1 district would allow him to flex the setbacks. There is an increased height allowance, and then also does not require any parking. So at last month's meeting, the Plan Commission did seem to support his development ideas, and the idea that the CBD 2 is fairly restrictive on this lot. However, there was some concern regarding the height that CBD 1 allows, and then also the lack of parking. And we also discussed that during the economic development project a couple of years ago, this matter did come up, and there was some comment about waiting for 705 Genesee Street to be fully developed and occupied to see how that development impacts parking downtown. So Plan Commission did give direction for staff to just come up with maybe some other ideas that could help the applicant, but maintain some of the provisions that you had concerns with. So Chris is proposing the rezone, but another option, which is included on the agenda, is to possibly amend the text of CBD2 instead of rezoning it to CBD1 and allowing flexibility in the setbacks and floor area ratio if the property is on Genesee Street, which is really your core downtown area. And if you look at the zoning map, it really is limited to the properties. He would be this property would be the northernmost property, and then it would extend to Cushing Park on the south of his property, on the west side of Genesee Street. However, in providing that flexibility, if the ordinance was amended to say no setbacks or floor area ratio, the existing height requirements would remain for CBD2, and then the parking provision would also remain, which does say that he either needs to provide parking on site, or the Plan Commission can decide if an in lieu payment is acceptable, or he can use parking on a nearby lot within a certain distance if he owns the property. Chris, do you want to add, you want to give your name and address, please, and then add your commentary?
I've been waiting to give my name and address. Chris Miller, Miller Marriott Construction, 711 Wells Street, Delafield. My comments on it? I think either are acceptable amendment, an amendment to CBD2 is, I think, acceptable. I think the concern I have with that amendment is parking. I think that's really kind of what we're all trying to figure out here. The reality is, you know, for me, I would like some clarity on what that parking would look like if let's say, CBD2, the amendment would have some sort of parking, but it would be reduced from a normal CBD2, that we'd have to provide some parking. I think it would be difficult to redevelop this property and provide all the parking that would be required to CBD2. I guess if the board would be willing to either go CBD1 or go CBD2 with the ability to get parking in lieu of, and have that be part of the process, that the parking, you could get it, but you have to pay for it from the city. I think it would, you know, for me, on my side, it gives me clarity on what the parking looks like for the project. And I think that's a real kind of question we're trying to answer, is how do we manage that parking? So,
Amy, what is the fee that the city receives in lieu of providing parking?
I don't have the formula with me. It's established by the city administrator, and Chris just had to pay the fee for another site, and it includes, do you know what it all includes?
it's like around 25 or 2,800 bucks a site, a spot.
Is that per year or a one-time?
Well, one-time fee.
One time?
Per business operation.
Yeah, and if you look at it, and I'm only kind of interpreting, I'm not an attorney, it appears like when it was developed, it was like, hey, we're going to have to someday build some parking, additional parking. Here's some money for that when you have to, you know, increase parking. That's what it appears like in the ordinance when you read through it, but I wasn't here when it was approved, and I'm not an attorney, so.
And this was, I'm sorry, it was 2,800, 2,500 per operation,
Per
stall.
Per site.
per stall?
Per stall.
Okay.
So
It's-
I do know, too, that there was some flexibility provided in the cost of the stalls. Soulfire had to pay a fee, and then Miller Marriott Construction had to pay a fee more recently. The cost has gone up just because of the cost of construction, but it doesn't include the cost of like acquiring the land and building the parking stall from scratch. So it was actually a reduced fee, and I do believe Tom would like to have a more formal policy prepared so that it, with the specific intent identified, going forward. So I don't know exactly what the formula is or should be right now.
Yeah, I thought the formula was fair for the construction side of it. I agree with that. It didn't really anticipate, the land cost. So I think that would be a relevant conversation to have as well. And there was different parking requirements for different types of operation, whether it be retail or office, and you basically had to pay for the spots you couldn't provide.
So right now, CBD2 allows the flexibility for the Plan Commission to approve a construction of a building and waive some or all of the parking requirements with an
Correct.
in lieu payment.
Correct.
So that sounds like what you're asking, it's already there.
What I would ask for is that it's not a vote by the Plan Commission, that you have an option of doing in lieu parking and have that fee specified ahead of time.
So I think the difference is right now, you get to decide whether or not you're willing to offer the in lieu fee.
Correct.
Willing to offer, what's that again, Amy?
So right now, you don't have to offer the in lieu fee. It's up to the Plan Commission to decide whether or not it's
Got it.
appropriate. With Soul Fire and the Miller Marriott construction site, just kitty corner to City Hall, there's significant on-street parking directly adjacent to the development. So each site right now is looked at carefully to see if there is practical parking nearby.
Okay. Last month, somebody referenced that, and you had referenced it tonight, that once the grain exchange is completed, I'm filling in what I think I heard, that we'd have some time to assess what the impact of that development is on parking. And I don't know if there was any formal thought as to what that assessment would look like. And I know it's not completed yet, and this is an observation of one night, but my wife and I went to dinner downtown to El Mido last Friday, and at 7 o'clock at night, when we walked out, the parking behind, I don't know what it's called, but there were 11 spots up there on a Friday night at 11. That's not a research, but it's an observation. But I'm wondering if there was any thought about what analysis would be done in terms of the implication of parking for the grain exchange.
The parking study was done.
Oh, okay.
Based on the build-out in the usage that it's currently has. And that shows parking available in what's known as a fish hatchery lot with the full build-out and full occupancy of the building. But still, you go anywhere and people will say, there's no parking downtown. And so it is a matter of having that construction all done and having that parking lot vacated from, they were staging construction equipment there forever. But, so the question in front of us is consideration to whether or not we'd want to say, for those properties, we don't weigh in on what the use of the property is or what the intended, tenants are going to be or do. It would be entirely up to the developer of the properties to determine whether or not they wanted to provide their own parking or pay a fee and let the city figure out how to spend it to make parking available. Or handle future parking issues.
So on that point, Tim, is there any strategic plan on where there might be available future parking for the city to acquire?
Dating back to when I first began on the council in 2009, there's been requests, actually it's Soulfire, the building where Soulfire is. We had our city administrator look at purchasing that property for the purpose of putting parking spaces in, and it was cost prohibitive then. I don't know that prices have gone down, but it was not a $3,000 or $2,500 a spot cost. So the in lieu parking fee does not take care of the land. It would put a spot someplace, but on a piece of land that somebody else owns apparently.
Two things. So I do totally agree with what you just said with the, buying of the land and things like that. For me, a lot of it is clarity. If I know that a spot's going to be 5,000, if I can't provide enough and I know that I at least know what it's going to be so I can evaluate that. I also think that this site is very unique. It has a parking lot right next to it that really isn't used very much. Now that I'm here all the time, I always look over there and there's like 2 cars. There might be 5 cars once in a while. You know, right now when I walked in, there was 1 car sitting there at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday. So this is a unique situation, and that's why I wonder if just rezoning this one property, CBD 1, is just a good solution, and maybe put a height restriction on CBD 1 to 2 stories on that, or something like that, because this is a very unique property in the city.
Amy, you've mentioned Soul Fire and on-street parking. Isn't this similar? There is a street there, Pamelia Street. I think it's kind of odd. It's always looked at as a parking lot, but there is a road that goes through there.
Yeah, I don't know, Mike, if you can put on the packet screen. So directly north of his property, there is a municipal, I mean, it's part of Pamelia Street, but you could call it a municipal lot in essence, that is used by the adjacent properties. And maybe sometimes people who are coming to City Hall and other facilities nearby.
Right.
So he does have some parking there. I think the concern was that at the last meeting, he wouldn't be given exclusive use of that. And his employees are on site for an entire workday compared to a lot of the users downtown are coming and going from retail and service shops and restaurants and stuff. So that would be up to you, because you would need all of that, pretty much that entire lot.
What I considered was one of his plans had it where some of the parking would be on-site and some would be over in the midst lot, which I preferred over all of it being off-site, because then it lessens the impact of that parking lot. Because during the day is going to be the busy time downtown once the grain opens.
I believe if he is provided the flexibility from setbacks and floor area ratio, well, not so much floor ratio, but the setbacks,
Yep.
it gives him an opportunity to have more space in the back of the property for parking spots. But how many?
I think there were like 6 or 7.
6 or
I'd have to look
7
at the plan.
That would help.
Yeah. And quite frankly, there's many times that we only do have 5 or 6 cars.
Yeah.
You know, our employees come and go as well.
I see that as a viable option.
And so maybe it's modifying the CBD 2 to, you know, reduce the parking count. And
Wouldn't it be more practical to just charge the fee for the difference rather than changing the code?
I think what he's asking for is, I know what he's asking for is he's got an idea of what he wants to do with the property. He wants the formula right now, you know, he wants the formula defined and coded so he can go ahead with his investments. And anything we do, if we do something for CBD2, we're doing it for a series of properties, not a single.
Right,
one.
so that's my point. Might a better option be he commits to 4 or 5 spots behind his property, he pays the city $2,800 for the balance. If I'm understanding it, we could do that and then just move forward, realizing that it's a unique lot that's likely not otherwise going to be developed. And then we're not changing a precedent for, you know.
So I think the concern is you can certainly do that. That's the recommendation of staff is, well, not specifically parking, but to leave the parking provisions the way they are. And then, but I think Chris is concerned, you know, he's just voicing his concern with that because he doesn't have assurance and he has not yet purchased the property. And at this level, we're just at the rezone stage, so he needs to come in with a development proposal, and that's at the time the Plan Commission decides whether or not in lieu fee payment is appropriate. So I believe that's where we're at a bit of a
correct, like,
stalemate.
I would just like some clarity on the parking.
Well, can the city administrator work up the number prior to his development?
Well, Plan Commission needs to decide whether or not in lieu payment is appropriate.
He's asking that the decision not be ours, that it be codified as something that would be locked in.
That's a good description.
Guaranteed approval.
And that would be, so right now it's set up
That's
so
not
that,
completely true.
right now it's set up so
Well,
that you
that's what I
can
mean,
do an individual assessment of what an impact of a particular development's gonna have and make that decision as we go. And if the parking situation downtown gets exacerbated, you could say we're not gonna be doing in-loop parking anymore because we're at capacity or, you know, the party's over.
Yeah.
And he does not want to have that latitude on this side of the,
Or at least like say, we'll cut the parking requirement in half, you know, we could, or to, a third, like you could provide a third of the spots you needed. So at least have some clarity on it.
It's-
I mean, so something that we need to consider as, and we do every time we make a decision as the plan commission, is to identify what the intensity of the use of the development's gonna be. You know, what is it being used for? Is it gonna be used for, is it gonna be an art gallery where people are gonna be coming at certain times and they're not there all day? It's one proprietor and a retail operation? Or is it gonna be, 20 employees that are working full-time there every day and they're gonna be parked outside? So the uses are different, so that's why we have the latitude built into the code to make those decisions based on each one.
So on that point, it seems to me, go back to my reference to 2 Friday nights ago, the parking demands, I think, in Delafield are going to be exacerbated in the evening. I know people come here for lunch, but hopefully most of them will be walking across the street from his location in the grain exchange. So maybe the exception for a business that's operating from 8 to 9 and then not at 100% might bear some flexibility compared to something that would suck up resources in the evening.
I think maybe what might be worth doing is talking to the city attorney a little bit about at which time you can make those decisions for this particular property. Because I think Chris is asking for the code to be changed to automatically allow it, but you have no idea what uses are gonna come in on the other properties on Genesee Street. I mean, someone could come in with a substantial development. But maybe it could be a condition of zoning amendment, or text, well, no, it wouldn't be a text amendment. Maybe with the text amendment, there's a separate agenda item discussing in lieu payment, how many parking stalls could be used for in lieu payment on this site without the specific development proposal, subject to certain conditions. I don't know, I mean, I don't know that the plan commission can do much better than that.
Yeah, some clarity would be nice, and know that like what the floor area ratio is allowed and height. And like I said, 2 stories is great. I don't need to go 3.
So if they do if they move forward with the text amendment, it would just be eliminating floor area ratio and setbacks on Genesee Street for CBD2. So height and parking rules would stay the same.
But couldn't they amend parking at least and say parking would be relieved by a certain percentage?
Well, that's what you're asking for, but you just have to understand if they make that decision, it affects all of the properties
Oh, it
in the
does.
zone CBD.
All CBD2?
And they don't know what uses are going to come in or how the scale of development that could be proposed.
So it's not just for this one property?
Right.
No, a text amendment covers everything. And did we not rezone these houses to CBD two?
No, see.
Or was that a different?
The land use plan was amended, and there's a special use area over that allows it to be rezoned as a development comes in with a conditional use. So the dental office has a rezone and a conditional use, which is CBD 4.
Could you
CBD2.
rezone it CBD 1 with some requirements attached to it?
We discussed that as a staff, and it's not advised by the city attorney.
Okay.
You mean to put limitations on parking and height
Just on the
this
one property, rezone it CBD 1, but say you can only go so high and,
Yeah, that was not advised by the city attorney. The city doesn't have a good mechanism for tracking these individual conditions per property.
yeah.
Did you think of any other options, Amy, to solve this? I mean, I'm back where I was last time. If this doesn't work for him, the only other alternative I can think of long-term for the city's benefit is to buy the property and turn it into a parking lot. So
Get out your check.
unless that's going to happen,
It's going to be very
if there's a
expensive.
way to work where we're not handcuffing ourselves, for a large swath of the city,
I think it
That
would
makes
help
sense.
Chris to understand, regardless of the text amendment, does the plan commission support in lieu payment or not? Because if you don't, and you want his parking to be on site, I think he's going to have his answer of whether or not to pursue the property regardless of how we you amend the text. If you do support the in lieu payment, then I think we discuss this week with the city attorney, how do we, keeping it CBD2 with the other provisions is probably the cleanest way to do it,
Yeah.
but how can we help the applicant get to the parking issue sooner than later, so he knows whether or
well,
not.
maybe we should talk about that. I support that.
I
given the-
support it
yeah,
too.
Given the nature of the development.
So would you like to bring the item, text amendment only at this time? Do you want that to come to Plan Commission in June for a public hearing for amending CBD2? And then if we can have a separate agenda item to talk about parking on this property, add that to the agenda as well?
Makes sense to me.
That sounds
Yeah,
good.
makes sense.
Does that work for you?
It sure does.
I think they would be two separate items, and we can discuss it before it gets noticed in the paper and make sure that you're the applicant, make sure
Yeah,
you support.
perfect.
All right,
Okay.
so do we have a motion to schedule a public hearing with the text amendment, proposed text amendment for the next meeting?
I'll move, we propose a text amendment to, help me out here, Amy. A text amendment to
Schedule a public hearing.
schedule a public hearing for,
Or schedule make a motion to schedule a public hearing to amend the text of CBD2 as discussed.
okay, can I just say, yeah, that's my motion.
There's a second.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? We've had plenty. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, public hearing is scheduled. All right. New business. Item 10A, 1760 Milwaukee Street, DLC 0802997, Unit B, owner Waukesha County Capital LLC, applicant Bluto Lighting. Applicant is requesting permanent signage to advertise straight edge flooring. Is the applicant here? Please state your name and address.
Press
press the
the
button.
button, there you go.
Blair Bennis. I'm with Elevated Identity, who is contracting with Buto Lighting for the install services. So Elevated Identity is the signage vendor for straight edge flooring. We are at 1 Park Place, Suite 310D in Janesville.
Okay, thank you. Amy, you want to give us an overview?
Okay, so at the April meeting, the applicant did obtain approval to operate a showroom for flooring installation operation on the west side of the building that's shown on the screen. And now they're here to propose signage. So they are proposing a 26.66 square foot illuminated wall-mounted sign that it will be internally lit. The sign size complies with the ordinance. It's just a matter of whether or not Plan Commission wants to accept the illumination. And if you do, we would recommend the typical condition that the sign not result in internal, external illumination, and more than 40-foot candles measured with a standard light meter held 10 inches from the sign, and that because of the location of this sign, that the lighting be turned off by 10 p.m. The logo on the sign is flush to the wall, and then the lettering will be affixed to an aluminum raceway that'll match the building. And the face of the sign will be acrylic overlaid with digital printing vinyl letter, and the logos in the white, orange, and black. I believe the intent is for it to be a pretty subtle illumination, is that correct?
Yes, and we can control that.
If anyone recalls, there was a marina company there for a little while.
Marine Harbor,
They had a lit sign as well, and they also had it turned off by 10.
Yeah.
because that spot is pretty dark. there's not much there, so.
It's just really how much do we want on the lake, I think was the concern back then. You know, it's
Yeah.
nice to, when it's dark, let it be dark.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve with illumination, and the sign shall not result in internal, external illumination of more than 40-foot candles when measured with a standard light meter held perpendicular to the sign face at a distance of 10 inches from the sign, and the sign lighting shall be turned off at 10 PM each evening.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, your sign is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10B, DELC 0793021002, 705 Genesee Street and 525 Main Street. Owner 705 Genesee Street LLC. Applicant TJ Riley, Hendricks Commercial Properties. Applicant is requesting to revise the multi-tenant signage program for the grain. Is the applicant here or representative for them?
Wow.
Well, the next three items depend on this multi-tenant signage modification. Do you want me to just go through it?
Yeah, why don't
And then
you?
if you have questions for the applicant, then it might have to be delayed. So Hendricks did come in and they received multi-tenant signage approval last year. They are modifying the signage. They are continuing to propose signs between the third and fourth floor on the south elevation and the east elevation of the easternmost building to accommodate their main tenant. And those will be the only two signs allowed that accommodate the users of the second, third, and fourth floors, other than the signs on the windows next to the entrance doors. The first floor tenants will have signage above their entrances. Originally, they were going to be affixed to the awnings, and now they're going to be above the awnings. So there's really limited space. The signs can really only be 2 feet in height, and that's what they're proposing, and then 12 feet, 6 inches wide, which is giving you your 25 square feet. They can't have, each sign cannot exceed 25 square feet per the code in the downtown area. And then if you look in the packet, Hendricks did include several pages of criteria that have to be met. They have written in there that they have the ability to waive that criteria. You know, I think most importantly, from the city's perspective, we want to make sure that they comply with the code and that they're compatible with one another. And then the tenant signage on the corner of the Genesee Street building, that one will be a little bit smaller in that it can't be more than 9 feet, 8 inches wide. I don't believe we have any sign proposed on that face yet. And then all of those signs will be on backer boards, and they are allowed to be unique within each business is able to be unique. And then there is an option on those tenant signs on the first floor. So all of them have the gooseneck lighting that's already installed on the building, but they can also have these small black flashlights installed on the awning that face toward the sign for additional lighting. At tonight's meeting, we don't have none of the tenants are proposing that, but it is an option. And then you can see on the entrance door of the west building, you have the office tenants. There's 4 panels on each side of the main entrance door. And then on the east building, there's 4 panels on one side of the main entrance door. And then back several months ago, they did get some wayfinding signage approval and then address signage, which they are going to keep that same signage that was originally approved. Oh, they are, I should say, in their multi-tenant program, they are also allowing window signage, decal-type lettering with limited heights that can be applied to the interior face of the glazing on every other window pane to minimize the amount of them. And then the city has a requirement that the window signage can't exceed 25% of the panes. And then they, originally, if you remember, they were proposing a freestanding sign. They are not proposing that anymore. They decided they don't really have space for it.
So
Is underground parking typically labeled?
I believe, you mean the park, like for people to know to go in?
Yeah.
Well, that's already been approved. I think it depends on the development of it. I know there's a couple, I don't know if that's the entrance for the trash. Oh, maybe not. I think there's a separate door for the trash room. They wanted to make sure that the garbage people knew what entrance to come in. And then the parking is for the employees, really. So I'm sure they will know where the parking is.
I would hope so. Okay.
I think that's facing Dopkins, right? I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
that's the only- That's really the only thing you'll see. It might actually provide a little
Yeah.
aesthetic.
So at a glance, my impression is that they took an existing sign program, they eliminated the freestanding sign that was on the corner, which I take as a positive. They took the signage off the awnings and put them flush to the building, which I think also is going to be a cleaner look and probably easier to maintain long-term. And they've got specific restrictions on the type of lettering and other things in the windows. And at the end of the day, any new sign comes before us to be for approval in addition to all that. So unless there's questions that somebody has that they can't answer, I don't see why we should not act in their absence. In other words, if there's a question that we would have for them that
Oh,
we'd need to defer to a future date, then we'd have to do that. If you're okay with it, feel free to make a motion or,
I agree. This method would clean up the visual part of everything really well. So I will make a motion to approve the multi-tenant signage as presented. Individual tenant signage affixed to the building will need to be reviewed and approved. When the individual operation is presented for review and approval, written approval from the landlord shall be included with the application packet for each tenant. Panel signage adjacent to the entrance doors does not require additional approval, provided the panel signage complies with the renderings included in this application.
Second.
any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, item 10B is approved. Item 10C, DELC 0793021002, again, 705 Genesee Street. Innovative Signs, it's permanent signage to advertise brunch. Thank you for coming. Press the long black button on the bottom and please state your name and address for the record.
Angela Allen, actually with Minuteman Press Brookfield, who is subcontracting with Innovative Signs to do the signs for brunch. Address is 13680 West Capitol Drive, Brookfield, Wisconsin, 53005.
Thank you. Amy, what is this
Okay.
all about?
So Brunch received their business plan of operation several months ago. They'd like to get in there and start operating. They are proposing signage. It does comply with the newest multi-tenant program. I think the depths, Hendricks would like to see the depth of the sign to be at least 2 inches. I think it's at least 1.5 inches. The board is an inch, and then the, or
1.5, and the borders can go up to 2, but it's
Okay.
1.5.
Okay, so it's a little bit thinner than what Hendricks would recommend, but Hendricks did approve the signage. I have their stamp of approval. And the color palette, it does have some yellow in it, so I did include the color palette in the packet. The downtown colors are supposed to be compatible. They don't have to match those colors, but compatible, so I just want to make sure you look at that. I do believe Brunch did try to mute the yellow. It typically is a little bit brighter, and they tried to mute it a little bit.
More like
Yes.
farm-raised eggs and, or free range, right?
Yeah,
Free range.
actually,
Free
we were looking at using the yellow that is on the palette there. I think it is.
27.
27, yeah.
Oh, you're using that exact color?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we're planning on. We may not be able to do that on their menu, but we are planning on the large sign to go with the teal, which I think is 49, and then the yellow, which is 27.
In our packets, it's more of an orange. That's really yellow.
Yeah, yeah.
So this may have been more updated.
I liked the looks of this, and with the white trim in that, and I went by the other day and they were painting it a dark green, and I thought, I would have liked a picture of this in the dark green so you get a better perspective of what it's gonna look like. And I think they could have manipulated that to get that color. That would have been
I
nice.
mean, the trim.
Yeah, because it's dark green.
Yeah.
And then these are different colors too. So I don't really get a good feel for what it's actually going to look like. So, but other than that, it's okay.
Yeah, and then the window, they are proposing the window signage, so on each door face, and then on, the menus will be on each side of the doors. They did provide the calculations that are in the packet. Each of those will meet the 25% criteria, and Hendricks did approve that window signage as well. And then they are relying on just the gooseneck lighting for illumination. And the sign's 18 square feet.
I'll make a motion to approve the signage as presented.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. Your
Thank you.
sign is approved. Get after it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10D, DLC 07930210002, 525 Main, Suite 100. Applicant Kevin Cook, J&B Signs. Applicant is requesting permanent signage to advertise Velvet and Tool. Is there a representative here for them? Please come up. And your mic is already loaded.
Kevin Cook, 1221 Venture Drive, Janesville, Wisconsin, J&B Signs.
Okay, so Velvet and Tool also just received business plan of operation approval, I think just last month. So they're proposing one simple sign. On the rendering, you'll see it actually does look like it's attached to the awning, but it will be installed above the awning. It'll be 2 feet in height, similar to the Brunch's sign. The sign will be the entire 10 foot 6 inches wide, so it'll be 25 square feet. The colors are gray tones that are compatible with the color palette, and they'll have black aluminum letters and also rely on the gooseneck lighting.
I did see 2 fonts, and I believe it was 2 different fonts in the packet.
Yeah, so it's just the sign that I have that I have on the screen is the font that they're using.
More of a
This
script.
font they're not using, but they're showing the mounting, how they're mounting it differently than so unfortunately, the plans are a little, I think, dated, and they're trying to show
Okay.
that they made some changes to it.
Okay.
Also, if I may, my engineer this afternoon told me because of the small font of the word boutique, getting 2-inch depth aluminum letters really cannot be done in order to accommodate that. So what we propose is what we call sign foam. It would be painted, look exactly the same, adhered to the backer panel.
Just make sure you get Hendricks approval for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the sign as presented.
I'll second. Go with
Go with
Dan.
Dan. All right, discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay. You have your sign approved.
Thank you.
Item 10E, DLC 07930210002, 705 Genesee Street, Suites 300 to 400. Applicant Dan Wise, REIC Labs. Applicant's requesting permanent signage to advertise REIC Labs.
It's Rake Labs, just so everyone knows.
Rake? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
I was wondering.
Yeah,
Rake?
Rake,
Okay.
like a leaf.
Like a rake.
Gotcha.
Raking leaf, yeah,
Yeah.
plan words,
Okay.
an acronym, so. Dan White's representing Rake Labs, formerly Synthetic. We just had a DBA, so we changed our sign. The sign prior was approved under Synthetic Inc. But we're at 705, obviously, Genesee Street, Suite 300.
Okay, so they did come to a previous meeting. The signage is actually really similar. It just now has a new name and new color scheme. But it's in the same location between the 3rd and 4th floors. It will be, each sign will be identical, and they will each be 21 square feet. Closer to the mic. The signs will be placed on aluminum plate raceway to match the building, so the raceway should be, pretty invisible. The letters and logo themselves will not be illuminated, but they will have an external light above the sign that will shine down, and I believe there's an image in the packet. As an example, you can see on the screen, and they are going to have the fixtures, and I believe it's actually in Hendrick's requirements that they have to have timers set to them. So this is another item where I'm recommending as staff that the lighting be turned off at 10 PM. If you want to switch that time, you can. But I believe they will definitely be closed. Their hours of operation are much earlier than that. And they do state that their lamp temperature will likely be between 3,000 and 3,500 K. And again, this one I do have in here, the color palette, just to make sure that the yellow is compatible to what you see in that palette.
I think that would be my only concern, that the yellow as presented does not seem consistent with the color palette. I mean, that's a bright yellow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The only thing is that it matches, obviously, our company color. That's what we went off of. So if we changed it, we might just go with a plain white. We'd have to think that over if you don't approve.
What is do you know what the size of the logo is? It's one,
I know the size of the overall sign, but the logo itself, I don't think I do know.
it's 1 foot 9 inches tall. Well, the
Right.
whole thing is 1 foot 9 inches tall. It's probably a little bit less.
1 by 1.9 probably, I would assume then.
So you would go with the white, essentially? If you wouldn't be able to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how far off the yellow is that you would approve, so I don't know what to say with that. We could go with a white, or we could go, yeah.
I'm comfortable with the white or the historical color palette, if you can make it work. I mean,
Yeah.
Laura, I think there are a lot of great options here.
Is black one of them? Would you do black?
Black would be one, yes.
Yeah.
Or there is yellow, it's.
Right, yeah. And we may do yellow, but it just doesn't, align with our color palette. So
Sure.
I'll have to talk that over, though. But as long as it's within that palette, it would be approved? Okay.
What would be interesting is
Yeah.
it would match brunch then, because they're
Yeah.
using the exact color from the palette. So you'd have.
They could
they'd be
match
on
us, though.
the- They would be on the first floor.
That would be interesting.
First.
Yeah.
What's that?
They were first, though.
Yeah.
They're approved.
Oh, we were approved the synthetic first, so we'll take that. No, but I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think synthetic, I'm trying to think.
It was red.
We had the same.
Red? It wasn't.
No,
yellow.
no,
it wasn't?
It was
It was
black and
yellow?
yellow.
Okay.
It was the same.
Really, okay.
Yeah, it was the same.
Yellow, like there were a few, AI was yellow?
Yeah. Exactly.
A motion to approve the signage as presented in our packet this evening with the conditions that the colors match the downtown palette and that the sign shall not result in illumination of more than 40-foot candles when measured with a standard light meter held perpendicular to the sign of the face at a distance of 10 inches from the sign. And finally, all lighting shall be set to turn off at 10 PM.
Second.
More discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, sign is approved with those conditions.
Thank you.
Okay, item 10F, DELC 0787088, 725 Milwaukee Street, owner VLC LLC, applicant Chad Chemnitz. Applicant's requesting site plan and appearance approval to modify the windows and doors on the existing building at Sports and Classics.
Okay, so this property is located in the northeast corner of Milwaukee and Oneida Street, and it's the automotive repair and service building. They did come in and they proposed to replace the windows and expose 2 windows a year ago-ish, maybe. But the windows were going to be a wood stained, and now they're proposing the black black aluminum clad. Is that correct?
Yes.
Go ahead and state your name and address, please.
Hi, Chad Chemnitz, 133 Hill Street, Heartland.
you
Basically, what happens, we ordered the windows wrong, and in retrospect, the existing windows were black that were opening up, so we decided to try to go with the black color.
Ben? What is this part, Amy, about the door replacement?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, in the packet, I wasn't sure what the materials were for the doors, but they are the same as the windows. They will be aluminum clad.
Okay. Any questions?
In black.
Okay. Well, I'll make a recommendation to approve the windows as presented and the door. Since even with no details provided, I'm sure that it's going to match according to the photos, so I will recommend that we approve that.
I'll second.
Any discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, moving right along. Item 10G is approved.
Good luck.
10F, sorry. Item 10G, DELC 0794017004, 258 Enterprise Road. Owner SBA Structures LLC, applicant Shane Stubblefield, requesting site plan and appearance approval to install a generator at the base of existing telecommunications tower for the benefit of T-Mobile.
Okay, so this property is at the end of the cul-de-sac of Enterprise Drive. It has two towers on it. Well, actually, one of the towers is on a large pole, a utility line, and the other tower does have a conditional use permit and several co-locators. As part of that conditional use permit, any improvements do need to go through the Plan Commission for approval, but do not require a public hearing. And the applicant is proposed, and I did go out there, it's very wooded. You really have to drive into the site to even find the concrete pad that the tower is on. And the applicant's proposing a generator on the existing gravel pad. They'll have to put a concrete pad below the generator itself. And the generator will be 2.9 feet wide by 7.5 feet tall. And it's a 48 kilowatt diesel generator. There aren't going to be any neighbors impacted by noise. This is a little industrial type park. And then they will have a switch plate. Let me see if I can find the site plan here. There'll be a switch plate and then a line that will attach the meter to the generator. And then the switch plate will turn it on when there's a power outage. Is that correct, Scott? That's how it works? And then they are gonna have to do monthly testing, and sometimes Plan Commission is pretty concerned about the amount of testing and the hours of testing. I didn't really get into that here because it is, there aren't neighbors that would be impacted. But you can certainly put restrictions on testing.
How will the diesel be stored?
There's a double wall containment.
Above ground?
Correct.
If you wouldn't mind.
What's the size of the tank?
I believe it's 229 serviceable gallons.
If you could introduce yourself, please, with name and address.
Hi, I'm Brian with SBA. I live in 311 East Morningside in Appleton.
Just curious, when will it be run? Every month?
It exercises, I believe, once every other week for about
Every
20 minutes.
Okay.
I believe it's usually from 9 a.m., somewhere between 9 and 10 a.m.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve the generator and accessory electrical equipment as presented.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, generator is approved.
Thank you.
Item 10H, DELC 079999701001, 920 Indian Spring Drive. Owner 920 Indian Spring LLC. Applicant Tammy Kevin. Applicant is requesting to amend an existing business plan of operation to reintroduce a dental assisting school to the Delafield dental operation.
Hello, Tammy Kevin, The business address is 920 Indian Springs Drive. I personally am 621 Bakertown Drive, Sullivan, Wisconsin.
Okay. So we've seen dental clinic or things come in several times over the last few years, but they have been operating for many years. In 2017, they did get approval for the signage that's out there, and if you look at the bottom of the sign, it does say dental assistant school on there. However, in going back in past approvals, it doesn't appear that that was ever part of a business plan of operation approval, and it wasn't mentioned when they had their, when they came in with their new addition a couple of years ago. And so, you know, Tammy did call proactively and ask whether or not they needed to come in for a business plan of operation, and I thought that they should come in and get it cleaned up. They have not been operating the dental school, is my understanding, since that sign has been installed. They're just starting that operation now. Is that correct?
Finishing accreditation for the school.
Just present, leave it at, there you go.
There we go. We're currently going through the process. We've been accredited, and we will be operating it out of our Wauwatosa location. This is something that we would only offer like as a satellite, probably not for maybe 1 to 2 years from now. And what it is 4 to 8 students possibly coming and observing and helping hands-on, assisting or shadowing throughout a day. And it would be Mondays through Fridays, 8 to 5 for a 4-week session. So there may be 1 or 2 classes every 6 months because we would have to fill at least a minimum of 4 students in order to even run the program. If not, it would be waylaid again till the next time that there was enough students to operate it. So it would not change any days of operation, any activity that's going on. It would be slight book work and just shadowing a doctor.
So I think the one thing here is parking. There's, they do fill that parking lot. Sometimes they have to park on Indian Spring Road. However, they do comply with all of the parking requirements. The school, the standards for a school in the code are one parking stall per 10 students. It doesn't quite fit this type of use. But they did end up installing 3 additional parking stalls compared to what was approved originally for the addition. So based on that, it does seem that they would have enough parking to meet the code requirements. The bigger concern is probably that those parking stalls weren't approved, and the Plan Commission was pretty specific on having that area screened from the adjacent properties. And so what I would recommend, the school itself isn't really the concern. So if you do approve it, I would recommend that it be subject to the applicant submitting a revised parking plan to include those southernmost 3 parking stalls for review at or before the July Plan Commission meeting, and that screening should be part of that approval.
Certainly. I was not part of the original with the parking, so I can find out what needs to be done for that. Be happy to.
Yes, this fence on the south side needs to be extended because anybody who parks in that eastern lot can look right into my kitchen.
Okay.
I have a large kitchen window.
So the fence was built accordingly to, it went to the parking edge to the parking edge. Is there a difference? I'd love to have somebody show us what the
I can see
expectation
the whole
is.
vehicles, the whole
Yeah, I
thing.
think it's just that the 3 southernmost parking stalls weren't ever on a plan, so the fence was installed to consider what was on the plan.
Okay.
And so the angle changes a little bit. It might be the fence might actually be kind of tricky because it is wooded, and then it's sort of, the grade sort of drops off a little bit.
Correct.
Going southeast. And I know the fence, the original installation of the fence, they wanted to push it further south because of snow removal. So it's possible that some thick evergreens might fit. You don't think that will fit
No,
better?
it's a slope. It's a big slope. It's been cleared.
Yeah.
Sean Kelly cleared everything, and it's a big slope now. And what they might have to do is put a fencing too on the east side, come around the corner.
Well, you come in with a proposal based on what you think is screening, but there is vegetation out there, and we have to be a little careful because we don't want them to be responsible for what Sean has done on a separate property.
Correct. That has
No,
nothing.
actually, he contacted them, and he was allowed to clear part of the dentist area.
Okay.
He didn't clear anything on our property. Sean didn't, unless we are not aware of it.
Well, Actually, he did a great job because he got rid of all the invasives
Correct,
and that,
yeah.
which is really nice.
We've got two things. We've got the approval of business plan of operation for the dental school addition. And then if we want to include the fact that they come back in with what's proper screening.
Yes.
Let's talk
Yes.
about that then.
Yeah, yeah. Just, I wanted screened because I don't care
We-
to have
we
people
understand.
looking into my
It's not
kitchen.
just you, we do it for
Yeah.
any neighbor, so
Yeah.
let's. So any questions on the dental school or motions for the business plan of operation amendment?
I'll make a motion to approve the business plan of operation amendment, subject to the applicant submitting a revised parking plan to include the southernmost 3 parking stalls for review at or before the July Plan Commission meeting. At that, the Plan Commission shall include sufficient screening from the adjacent properties to the south.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, we'll see you in a month. And we do need more hygienists, so keep training them, right? Okay, item 10I. DELC 0798017, 637 Main Street, owner Soda and Avila Properties LLC, applicant Caesar Soto. Applicant is requesting to amend the business plan of operation for Holy Cow and site plan and appearance approval to replace an existing patio and ramp and install a new patio for additional seating. Hey, Caesar, please come up. You can start by introducing yourself and address, please. There you go.
Yes, my name is Cesar Soto from 637 Main Street.
All right, Amy, what's going on?
Okay, so the applicant is proposing to continue operating Holy Cow under new property and business ownership. You can see he's been working out there remodeling and improving the building to open up later in, when are you gonna open, Caesar, try to?
I think 6 weeks we're gonna open for
Six-
now.
6 weeks, maybe.
Yes, it's the plan, so.
So as part of that, the improvements, he's going to expand the restaurant about 260 square feet into what was previously a residential unit in the back of the restaurant. For now, that space is going to be used for storage, and then the lower level will also be used for storage, and there is a residential unit
Yes.
on the second floor. Caesar might come in at a later date and make some changes to those spaces, but for now, there's just the residential unit above and the enlarged ice cream shop on the first floor. So the new restaurant area will be 1,065 square feet. And he is also proposing several site plan improvements, which would include, there's a paver walkway on the west side of the building that he's proposing to install concrete in its place. And then there's a ramp and railing on the east side of the property to access the entryway. He's proposing to replace that with a, let's see, there's an image in here. Hold on, I just flipped these sheets. With something newer and safer, and the railings will be black aluminum. And then he's installing a large concrete patio for additional seating. That will include approximately 10 tables, and then he's proposing those tables to be multicolor. He submitted some copies of the different colors that he would propose. He would like to have umbrellas. He doesn't have that material picked out yet. And he is willing to put some landscaping between the patio and the sidewalk, similar to what Zinn did. They have some planters. The one thing we don't have, though, is a survey of a current survey of the patio area to make sure it's outside of the right-of-way. And that was something we needed to make sure that Zinn had their patio outside of the right-of-way, and we want to make sure Caesar has his patio outside of the right-of-way. It does appear that a 12-foot deep patio will comply and be a couple feet away from the sidewalk and maybe a foot, 2 feet off of the right-of-way. But we would like, staff is recommending a survey before he puts that patio in, just to make sure. And then he'll have 2 full-time employees, 2 part-time employees, open from 8 AM to 10 PM, 7 days a week, except during downtown special events. Those would be the longest hours that he would be open.
Yep.
And then deliveries would be brought to the property during operating hours. And he did not include a landscape plan. He's willing to landscape, but he didn't include a landscape plan. So I did just say in here that Plan Commission should determine whether or not you want to see that if you approve the site plan improvements and business plan of operation.
Amy, on that point, what's the protocol or tradition of the city to require one or not?
A landscape plan? It's up to you.
Okay.
Is Caesar, is it your intent to have landscaping? And,
Yeah, it'd be nice, we can put a landscaping,
Okay.
similar to sinks, to look
Okay.
nice, yeah.
Are you going to be open year-round?
Yes, all year, yep.
Are you going to call it Holy Cow? You gonna
Holy
keep
cow,
it in?
same name, yeah.
Really? Nice.
Yeah.
So I know his highest priority right now is to get the ramp and sidewalk in. And
Yep.
then he is working on the survey so he can put the patio in. And then landscaping is to be determined.
I'll make a motion to approve the business plan of operation and site plan as presented, subject to a survey being completed prior to installation of the concrete patio, ensure the patio is outside of the right-of-way, and a landscape plan be provided for review and approval.
Second.
Okay.
Any more discussion?
I do have a question. Is the landscape plan, does that need to be provided before he makes the improvements, or within a certain time frame, or before the patio is installed?
I don't have a time frame. Is it recommended the city establish a time frame?
Well, it's just to help guide him in getting it done. I would say in order to open, I think he needs to get this ramp installed. So allowing him to install the ramp and sidewalk, I don't think he would require a landscape plan for those elements, the replacement. But maybe, maybe he needs to come in for a review and approval by the June meeting, and he can start his construction. I don't know, are you gonna have a survey done?
Yes, by next
Sue-
week.
Oh, by next week?
Next week, yep.
If you could, would you plan on pouring the patio before the June meeting?
Yes, I think, yeah.
I think on something like this, it's going to be minor. There's hardly.
Yeah.
Right,
I
right.
agree.
Not
Can
much.
we
Yeah,
say
wanted
it
to
could
hold
be done
anything
at
up.
staff level?
Yeah, can we say
I was thinking
landscape
the
plan
same
approved by staff?
Yeah.
Or you could have it be staff approved.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
I'll amend my motion to have the landscape plan approved by staff.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All right, good idea. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, get to work.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ice cream's
It's
coming.
an ice cream, right?
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, item 10J, DLC 0784021, 1423 Perry Lane, owner Jason and Lawrence Harned. Applicant Jason, am I saying that right? Harned?
Arnett.
Arnett, okay.
And it's Lorraine, but that's okay.
Okay, applicant is requesting Plan Commission approval for accessory building that exceeds 720 square feet.
I'm Jason Harnett at 1423 Perry Lane, Heartland, Wisconsin, 53029.
Okay. So this property is just south of Nagawicca Road and west of 83. He's got about 2 acres of property, and right now, if you look on the GIS map, there is quite a bit of storage north of the existing home and attached garage. He's proposing to put all of that storage inside of a building. When he applied, and what you see in the packet is he was proposing a 1,732 square foot detached garage with 1,200 square feet on the first floor and 532 square feet on the second floor. However, your recently adopted ordinance does prohibit structures greater than 1,200 square feet on less than 3 acres. He has agreed to modify the trusses of the structure, and that second story will be no more than 5 feet in height. The exterior appearance will look the same, but he will meet the 1,200 square foot criteria based on building inspector approval. So those plans have been already submitted and to myself and to Scott. The building will have the same materials as the house exactly. He found the exact same color and material. So the siding will be vinyl gray, and then the roof will have dimensional shingles. He is proposing, We just go through each of these elevations. So the east elevation, which faces Perry Lane, will have the overhead door and a small window in the roof structure. And then the opposite side, the west side, will have just a small window. That is facing there's vegetation on the north, west, and south sides of the property. And then the north side, he's not proposing any kind of window features. Again, there is some trees along the lot line that faces the adjacent property. And then the elevation that will face his house, the south elevation, will include 3 sets of windows and then a steel door on each end. I believe they are white steel doors, correct, Jason?
Correct. That is correct.
And then he's got a small bathroom with a toilet and sink being proposed and a floor drain. And as part of the new code, any structure that exceeds 720 square feet does need to come to Plan Commission for review and approval. And there's several standards that need to be met. I have all of those standards written in my staff report and an explanation of whether or not I thought they were meeting them. So just real quickly, the structure needs to be compatible with the principal building. The structure will at least have the same materials as the existing building. Steel and aluminum sided structures have to be located a greater distance. They're not proposing those materials. Roofing materials are limited to dimensional shingles, et cetera, which they are proposing the dimensional shingles. Architectural requirements may apply. The applicant has submitted the 4 elevations for you to review. Exterior lighting has to comply with section 5227, and all lighting has to be downward and shielded. They are proposing to meet those standards, and there are lights proposed. You can see them on the elevation renderings I can't remember where they all are, but I know the south elevation and the east elevation.
Correct. That's the only
That's
one.
it. And then landscaping may be required to minimize the impacts and structure to the neighborhood. He's not proposing any specific landscaping because he does have, there's natural mature vegetation on the 3 sides. And the Plan Commission may require a deed restriction prohibiting the commercial operations and human habitation. And I am recommending that deed restriction be recorded here, especially with the limiting the plumbing as well. So if you do decide to approve the request, I do have several conditions that I'm recommending. The accessory structure not exceed 1,200 square feet, shall not be used for human habitation or commercial purposes. The plumbing is limited to a single sink and toilet, an exterior hose bib. Shower or kitchenette facilities are prohibited. Preliminary site evaluation will need to be conducted by the Waukesha County Environmental Health Division prior to a building permit. This property is served by a septic system. The building shall be used for personal purposes only. Accessory structure shall not be rented out for any purpose. Exterior lighting shall comply with 5227. No further land divisions are permitted, and that a deed restriction be recorded with all of those conditions.
Amy, I have a question since we just did this 2 or 3 months ago. It seems, I'm trying to get my head around, we had these standards, we debated them, talked about them, and now it sounds like anytime somebody wants to go over the standards, they just come in and ask. And I'm just trying to get my head around that compared to why we set the standards up the way we did to begin with, unless there's some unique reason.
Yeah, I don't believe it was the intent to be restrictive on the size, to only allow up to 720 square feet. It was that you had decided you wanted to have architectural review control over
Okay.
those structures that are over
Okay.
720 square feet.
Okay, that
It's that
rings a bell.
1,200 square foot number is where the review becomes more
Detailed.
more detailed on.
Got it. That rings a bell. Okay, thank you. I was just trying to rationalize that.
Unless
Okay.
unless
No,
anyone feels
I
different.
think you captured it.
No.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It almost, you probably deal with less tearing down a house and building a new house than as far as coming here.
You will probably see these.
Yeah,
I
no,
would assume
now it
Just saying,
makes sense.
this
I was
is-
just trying to rationalize it from a math perspective, but I recall now that they have to then meet
It's, I
higher
think we're really trying to
standards.
attack the big steel pole barns that
Yep,
would
yep.
just show up.
Makes
Yeah.
sense, yeah.
That's not the intent. It's all matching everything.
Clearly.
Which is nice.
I even brought samples if necessary.
Okay, well, I'll recommend it to be approved with the city planner's recommendations and considerations of those items from 1 to 8 listed on the packet here.
Sorry.
I'm
I'll
not going to
second.
state them all.
Any questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. There you go, get building.
Thank you.
Okay, item 10K, DLC 079-2022-001, 1323 Genesee Street. And DLC 079-2022-542 Anderson Drive. Owners Jamin Tanya Shanklin, Aiden Smith, and Taylor Lowe. Applicant Aiden Smith. The applicant is requesting site plan and appearance approval to install a fence that's located on the adjoining lot line of two properties. Amy,
Yes, so I just have to make one correction. The applicant is Aiden Smith. I used Waukesha County GIS to determine the owner of the adjacent property. It has recently sold and it does not show up on GIS yet. So the owner is not Shanklin, it's Christopher and Jill Nines, and they have submitted a letter of approval, acting as a co-applicant to this project, just for clarification. So, the two properties that are being considered are shown on the GIS screen. The applicant is proposing to install a fence, which is shown with the red line on the screen. It does extend, or it'll be constructed pretty much on the lot line and then extend into both properties. It'll extend to the detached garage on the southern property and then extend to the corner of the house and a driveway on the northern property. They are proposing a white vinyl fence that is 6 feet in height. And Plan Commission approval is required for any fence that exceeds 4 feet in height and has less than 50% openness and is located within the setback area. And so they exceed all of those provisions, and they might be closer than the required side yard setback on the west property line as well. There's a 10-foot setback. It's probably close. So in reviewing signage, Plan Commission approval should consider to promote public health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare, enhancing the values of the property throughout the city, and to avoid and prevent deterioration of the general appearance of buildings, structures, landscaping, and open areas, encourage and promote efficient use of land, assure the site development takes into account the efficient provision of vehicular and pedestrian access, public utilities, stormwater management, other elements, including infrastructure and public facilities, encourage and promote acceptability, attractiveness, cohesiveness, and compatibility of new buildings, development, remodeling, and additions, and to preserve and protect the appearance and aesthetic quality of the city. So this is truly up to your discretion. But if approved, it should be subject to a survey prior to installation of the fence to demonstrate the location, especially as it relates to that west lot line for the southern property.
First of all, you're certainly beautifying the property. If I understand this right, the question I have, this is not within this city code in terms of where a fence should be put?
So it's that the building inspector can issue a permit if it is 50% open, 4 feet in height, and meets the setbacks.
So
The fact that all three of those aren't met, they need to come to Plan Commission.
is it meeting the setbacks?
No, well, it's right on the lot line.
Yeah,
between
that's
the
what I
two
thought. So
properties.
the question I have, and maybe you've asked this question, because I think the two property owners have agreed to this.
Mhm.
Let's say 2 years from now, one of the property owners sells the property, and the owner says, I want that fence off my property, setback. What happens?
Yeah, I mean, because of that, I think it would be nice if you chose a property to have the east-west length of the fence on, because that very well could become a problem in the future. unless you put an easement on, recorded easement that the two properties have agreed to, and it can remain in perpetuity or whatever, but it'd be easier to just move it.
That's the only concern I had with it.
I'm relying a little bit on my memory here, or almost entirely, but I'm trying to think of the exceptions we've made to the 4-foot tall fence rule, and I can come up with two, maybe. One was near I-94 behind the cemetery for, there's some vicious dogs that were really just endangering a neighbor. And I'm forgetting the other, another one was on Milwaukee Street, I think, where there.
Main Street.
Main Street, yeah, right, where there was just.
Lights and.
The new development of the sanctuary had a tree landscaping screening plan that was just never coming to fruition. So it's just for what it's worth. In some cases, I know when we've been asked, we've kept them down to 4 feet because of just the aesthetics of the neighborhood and how it looks with walls instead of fences. But I'm just sharing that from my perspective.
Well, how tall is the existing fence? It looks taller than 4 feet to me.
It's 6 feet.
It is 6 feet.
Names?
But it's open at the top.
I'm Aiden, Aiden Smith,
Did you guys get
542
the names?
Anderson Drive.
Tell her now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And Chris Nines, owner of 1323, 1325 Genesee Street, and live in Coach Lake Court, just north of downtown.
I guess, what is the purpose of the 6 feet?
Yeah.
Just to match what's there?
It's effectively replacing what's already there that's kind of falling apart.
I'm not crazy about the fact that it's solid, because there doesn't seem to be a problem here. Before, when we approved it, there was a problem with lighting or a neighbor's dogs, because you don't want the dogs to see, because they'll be barking all the time. Where there doesn't seem to be a problem here, and I don't understand, because I've seen the vinyl fences where they're open like this at the top.
I do actually have dogs as well that, do bark and try to get and do escape the current fence, which is why I'm also having it come to a complete close. But yeah.
My daughter has 2 dogs, and she fenced in a whole area for her dogs. And you're not fencing in a whole area, you're just doing a partial?
Yep. Just the back.
So what you effectively have is a closed-in or an enclosed backyard then?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. You need 6 feet, though?
Preferred?
Not the end of the world, but it's effectively replacing what's there.
For sure.
Which is kind of how we came up with it to begin with.
Right, which makes sense why you're asking, but obviously we have hesitation towards tall fences.
Right.
How long is the 6-foot section?
The whole thing would be 6 foot.
Well, I'm looking at the picture.
Length.
Yeah, can you pull up that picture that we had?
It's, it's 138 feet long. It is
But it
substantial.
looks,
Yeah, but not,
it looks like it cantilevers down after 2 sections on the picture.
I don't know if this,
That's not like the actual fence, what it would be. That would just be an
Example.
Oh.
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So the
What
whole
you're
fence
saying
would be
is
6
optical.
feet.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's too much.
and just, these are pretty small lots. These are the lots just north of Beacon Hill, so the fence probably will be substantial.
But only a small portion of it would truly be visible from C because it runs perpendicular. So the only part would be the part horizontal with C, which is through the backyard on 1323, 1325 Genesee Street. So it'd be pretty hard to see that fence unless you're on Anderson.
Or a neighbor, the next door neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Someday it might not be him.
right. I think it's a fair point, maybe
Yeah,
moving
yeah.
it to one of the lots. I think that's very fair.
Yeah. Don't mind the height, but I would prefer it to be like the old fence where it's partially open.
You said you have dogs, do you have concerns with the dogs? Or I don't know, how big of dogs you have?
They're small, but it's just they get riled up and.
So are you worried if we have an opening in there, the dogs could dart through it? I don't know what kind of dogs they are.
No, just
They're-
the top, just the top.
I'm saying, if,
For the opening,
For
they're
opening.
smaller dogs to where they could, depending on how, but the current fence, they're fine with not getting out.
Right.
So yeah.
What is it, I'm not sure I understood the practical reason for 6 feet versus 4? Just personal preference?
Personal preference, privacy fence, yeah.
Because the old fence was that high.
Yeah, we bought this property about a month and a half ago and have put a substantial amount of money renovating the one side and anticipate doing a like amount on the other. And I think the people that are going to want to pay the kind of rent that we're talking about are going to want a little bit of privacy, if possible.
Guess the only question on that, forget the fact that it's dilapidated, this gets back to Laura's point, is that the current fence, if it was new, the front, the top part of it at least is a see-through. It's a,
Lattice.
and.
It's the lattice, yeah.
And I guess the question would be, back to the reason the city has codes. A lot of people might prefer 6-foot fences, but the city doesn't.
If you think about Beacon Hill, with the houses that are there, they're very close to each other. Everybody might want a privacy fence in Beacon Hill. It would end up looking like a jail.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the purpose of some of this, where common fences are like dog-eared cedar fences that are, alternating, staggered, just to give some natural openness and some visibility to what vegetation might be there and not have, like I said, a city, it might look like a giant bathtub or a swimming pool from the outside. It might look great on the inside, but, if we end up with dozens of these in the city, we have historically not approved them.
And you can achieve privacy with vegetation.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, a typical fence is a cedar dog or something simulating that, dog-eared, staggered, open fence. That's why it's written in that way.
Yeah, I think 6 foot is a problem, given the city codes.
What does the city say about taking care of a neighbor, taking care of their yard?
It's codified.
It's what?
It's in the code.
Okay, so is the house, if you pull his neighbor, I don't think would be in code.
I don't recall a complaint being filed with City Hall yet.
Okay,
If there is-
you'll have
if
one
there's
tomorrow.
That is fine, that's not necessarily relevant, but
Well, it's relevant to the privacy that I would want as a tenant at that location, right?
I understand.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to deny because of the lack of it meeting all the ordinance requirements of being partially open, the height of it, and not being, and being right on the property line.
Just a point of clarification for me, is the partially open part of the code?
Yeah.
It is, okay.
It requires plan commission approval if it's not open and within the offset and height. Now, Scott, I'd have to look at the code.
Other part going down there.
You can have up to 6 feet in height if you meet the setback?
If it's in the rear yard, not within the rear or side yard setback area. So you can have this type of fence, just not so close to the property line.
Was this discussed with the applicant when they filled out the application?
I know our fence code, I'm sure I conveyed it.
Did we get a second on this?
No, we didn't.
We didn't. We need a second.
I was told the only issue was that it was not within 10 feet of the property line, not the height or anything like that, when I applied originally.
I think it's that because you're so close to the lot line, then the height also matters.
Okay, so
If that makes sense. It doesn't matter if you meet the height, if you are 6 feet in height and meet the setback.
So if I wasn't within 10 feet of the property line, I could have the exact same fence?
6 feet, I don't know about the open, it has to be open. Scott usually reviews the fencing.
There are three types of fences, not more than 4 feet high, at least 50% open. You can put it anywhere on your property with a permit from me. If you go taller than 4 feet or more solid than 50% open, then I can issue a permit for that if it's in the rear yard only, not within the side and rear yard setbacks. That's fence type number 2. All other fences come to Plan Commission. That's how I explain it.
So as far as it being the second option, where do we fall short from that? It is just the rear yard.
It's the proximity to the property line.
So what if we move it to my backyard?
You could,
Okay.
I mean, we'd have to confirm the setback requirements for this property. If it is 10 feet, then if it's in the rear yard only,
Yep.
and at least 10 feet from the side and rear property lines, I think you can come to me and get a permit.
10 feet from the property line?
Yes.
Okay. That's,
If the minimum side and rear setback is 10 feet.
And then we would be able to get the same 6-foot fence?
Yes.
So we can have the same fence that we're proposing as long as it's not within 10 feet, but if we do what we are both agreeing upon on the property line, that's where the issue is?
Again, if it's in the rear yard
For sure.
and not within the setback area and not more than 6 feet high, I can issue a permit for that.
So then getting it approved by all of you, knowing that we can get the same exact fence as long as we have it within 10 feet, but we're just asking it to be on the property line versus the set, like what it would be. I mean, we'll essentially have the same fence as what we're asking to be approved. It just won't be on the property line.
Well, I don't think you need to get approval here, from what it sounds like. You just,
But
we're
that's
not going
right,
to approve
but
what
that's
you're
what I'm saying.
recommending.
But you want it on the
We're
property
trying to
line.
have it on the property line.
Right.
That's
I don't- I'm not-
that's what I'm
well,
trying to get approved.
I don't think that, I'm not going to vote for that. Just other
Well,
people.
we already have a motion.
Yeah, we
Is there a
do.
second to the motion?
Need a second.
I'll second.
Is there any more discussion or questions?
Okay.
All in favor of denial, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, you can work with Scott on round 2. Okay, item 10L. DLC 0781021, 2761 Lake Breeze Lane. Owner Andrew and Laura Lean. Applicant John Schoenheider, Regency Builders. Applicants requesting site plan and appearance approval for construction of a retaining wall. Okay, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
John Schoenheider, 1133 Quail Court in Pewaukee 53072 is Regency Builders.
I think I'm on.
You're on. Yep.
I'm Brian Tom, Architectural Development Services. I'm the architect involved in the property, or the project. 150 North Sunny Slope Road, Suite 250 in Brookfield.
Okay.
Okay.
What's going on, Amy?
I'm going to try to explain this. Sometimes grading plans are hard to explain, but, so this is a new half-acre lot in the Nagawicca Heights subdivision. It's Lot 2. There is a house on Lot 1, which is the adjacent property south of this property. As you can see on the map, there are steep slopes. The steep slopes were discussed as part of the subdivision development, and most of the steep slopes are left in common open space. Really, the steepest areas on lots are these 2 corner lots and a little bit of Lot 3. The applicant is proposing to build a single-family house with a side entry garage and an in-ground pool. And in order to install that pool and patio on the area of steep slopes, they need to construct a set of tiered retaining walls, and those retaining walls do need your approval. So they are, let's see here. I'll go to a site plan and explain this the best I can. Brian, you can step in if it doesn't make sense.
No, we have
So
it.
they're proposing to expose the house at about 979.83. And you can see the exposed side of the house has lots of inundations to it, and there's a lot of topography change within that. So the natural grade on the rear side of the home ranges between 979 and 987. The 979 is pretty natural to existing grade, but the 987 is much higher, so they would have to cut that area. Then as you extend the patio and pool to the north, the natural grade is 970, and they're going to maintain that 979.5 feet. So in that case, they would have to fill a significant amount. So there's a combination of cut and fill in different areas to make it work. The walls on the north side will, there'll be 2 walls, and they'll be 5 feet and 4.5 feet in height, which is a total of 9 feet of walls. The applicant is in the process of getting an engineer to certify the stability of the retaining walls, which would need to be reviewed and approved by city staff. They're aware of that requirement. And then the walls on the, extending on the southwest side of the home, which is part of the staircase that leads to the exposure. There's gonna be a series of walls that are 3 to 4 feet tall each. And then there's also a wall that extends along the southwest lot line to accommodate the side entry garage. And that wall at its highest point will be about 7 feet in height. And then there's also a series of walls on the east side of the property. Or I should say, yeah, it's still a series of walls. So the ordinance states that owners are encouraged to grade their property as to preserve the natural terrain or in alternative to create a natural appearance and to avoid the construction and maintenance of walls. Any walls that do exceed 3 feet or that are located within 5 feet of the lot line do require plan commission approvals. The retaining walls will be more than 5 feet from the lot line, just over 5 feet, but they do exceed the 3 feet in height, and that's why they need your approval. And then Plan Commission shall determine whether the walls are structurally sound in material, form, and color, and that they don't adversely affect the property values in the neighborhood. And then your standards, your approval shall be based on several standards, including within the offset area, the difference in grade between lots is better controlled by the retaining wall. In the setback area, the terrain makes a slope to the road impractical. That provision doesn't really apply here. That the plans show the retaining wall will be structurally sound as to be constructed and it will properly contain and support the ground and pavements, walks, and other nearby structures. They're in the process of doing that. And the location and height shall be harmonious with the principal structure and consistent with the legislative purposes hereof. And on the corner lot provision does not apply. And neither does the provision where if walls are located within 5 feet, the neighbors need to be notified, and they meet that requirement. And then regarding the side entry garage, which is requiring this tall retaining wall on the south side of the property, that the subdivision restrictions for Nagawicca Heights do require a side entry garage unless it's determined by the Architectural Control Committee that they are infeasible or impractical. So this item is also up to your discretion, but if it is approved, I do recommend several conditions, including the grading plan and erosion control plan being reviewed and approved by the engineer and inspected throughout the construction project, and that the retaining wall construction plan be certified by a professional engineer, and that be reviewed and approved by the city engineer, and that a landscape plan be prepared for review and approval by the city engineer that shows plantings at the base of the wall in the southwest, along the southwest lot line, because that tall retaining wall will be exposed to the neighbor, and it would just help break that retaining wall up. And that the retaining walls shall be kept and maintained in good, sound, and presentable condition at all times. And if you went through the packet, I mean, you can ask me to go to any of these pages, but they did provide the 3D renderings that show how those walls fit into the site. And then I also included a couple of photos from a site inspection.
Couple of questions that I have. Have you discussed or gotten the concurrence for from the property owner to the south, I guess it would be?
No.
Okay.
The only reason being, and I'm happy to do so.
You need to speak into the mic if you don't mind.
I'm happy to do so, if that's something you want. Victory's a good company. But what our intent, these are going to be poured walls. Scott has the diagram showing that they're structurally poured walls. I'm considering, kind of since this is a slightly contemporary farmhouse style, we thought maybe a charcoal gray wall could be attractive, and possibly a charcoal gray driveway could be attractive. They will be protected by landscape barriers, But I'm happy to also talk to Victoria if you want me to do that.
Well, the
Which
reason
neighbor are you talking about, Scott?
Pardon?
You talking about the neighbor right to the south?
Yes, and the reason I asked that is, Amy was saying that it's within 5 inches of not requiring approval,
Neighborhood control, yeah.
but yet the height of it is higher than the code. So my thinking is that if the neighbor has a expectation the lot's vacant, I buy a lot, that the house next to me is going to be built according to code, and then they object to a wall that's 6, 7 feet high.
I understand, no problem.
So that would be the reason I would think that would be
Not a problem.
an improvement.
But the neighbor is a builder,
Yeah,
Victory Homes?
Victory, he's doing a spec.
So it's a spec home. They're-
Yeah.
Okay, well then maybe, but I think that's an important point.
think he's doing a
For the property owner to say,
Okay.
I'm okay
Yeah.
with it. Then he sells it and has to find somebody who's okay with it. That's fair.
As a friendly competitor, I have zero problem letting him know what we're doing.
The only other question, I don't know if you would know, Scott, or if this makes sense to have the city look at. Amy, I noticed a retention pond behind this property. And I'm wondering if this landscape plan has an adverse effect on the amount of water flow into that retention pond.
Well, I think they're actually going to tile all of their drainage so that it is directed toward the pond. We would have to ask, well, Brian Peel will have to review this, but that pond is pretty substantial. All the stormwater facilities are pretty substantial. I would think that part would be fine, that it's actually probably good that it's draining toward a stormwater
That's kind of the
facility.
reason for it.
It is.
Okay.
But that is why we don't always require engineer inspection throughout the entire project, but this will include substantial grading work right next to the pond, so we do want to make sure that they're out there. They probably will be out there weekly to inspect or monthly to inspect the site to make sure that sediment isn't getting into the pond, which then outlets eventually into the lake.
Right. Okay.
On the wall construction, these are cast-in-place poured walls.
Yeah,
They're going to have form liners. In your picture, it looks like block, or is there going to be facing?
I believe we were going to have a stamped concrete or concrete that has some type of a pattern to it, either stained or painted, and a stone cap across the top of it. But it's all going to be a structured footing that is rebar brought up into basically a foundation wall. It's all going to be structurally designed and engineered. Drain tile behind, all backfilled with stone so we can get all the water out from going down and pushing the wall out. So it is a structural.
Oh, I understand all that. I'm just concerned about not having this big concrete wall there
yeah.
that doesn't have any
I guess the reason why.
cosmetics to it, or,
I guess the reason why it is staggered like that, and there's enough space between it, one, so I can get my footings big enough, but two, so that we can get some larger plants in between the plantings. So when they grow up, they only have to be like 4 feet high, so the majority of that wall does kind of disappear with plantings in the layers. The only place that'll be a little harder to do that, and they're gonna have to do some taller planting, is the pinch point right where the stairs start to go down. That's the highest point, that's 7 feet. So they will have to put some taller stuff right there.
one other thing, Dan, there is a very significant environmental corridor right behind this house. No one will see the back of this home.
the bridle path is back there, isn't it?
No,
what?
the bridle path
A
is.
little bit more north?
The north.
Yeah.
I mean, even coming up the hill, if you're coming from Nagawicka Road, or going up the hill, I don't think you're going to see this.
And another thing to remember is that the neighbor to the southwest, their property is 2 feet higher than what this one is. And there's kind of a draw that's between the two when I look at the master grading plan. And actually, when you look at the existing house that's there in the grading that they put there, you can kind of see that there's a draw that goes between the two. That's another thing that's kind of driving that 7-foot tallest part of the exposed wall that they're going to see as part of it is the drainage pattern between the properties.
Okay, just so I'm clear, it's going to be a concrete wall without any cosmetics to it or anything.
Well, stamped with a pattern and stuff in it.
Okay, well, that's fine. Then the other thing with the wall, maybe Scott can answer that. Don't we have, if a wall is over 4 feet or something, it has to have a railing?
No,
Oh, it doesn't, okay.
it's not attached to the house, it's really landscaping. So our local code applies, and we really don't have one for a single-family home site.
Thank you.
This meets all the safety requirements for having a pool?
As far as fencing, and I have not looked at, I've not even seen a formal submittal, but I think it does, and if you want, you can elaborate.
And it does. If you look at the 3D, at the top of the stair, we have a railing that wraps around with a gate, dives into the side of the garage, runs down along the stair and across the top of the retaining wall and stops. The reason why we can stop that retaining wall at that point is I believe in Wisconsin, you have to have a 42-inch high barrier. Well, the retaining wall is 4 feet high, so it's taller than 42 inches. So we don't have to run the railing across the top of the retaining wall because we're already higher than what is required. The railing does pick up on the other side where we're not within that requirement, so it's picked up on the corner. There is a gate so that they can get out on the side, but across the top, since we have layered retaining walls on the back side, we picked up the railing there again, and it wraps around and dives into the side of the house. So it is fully contained.
All right. I just worry about the safety.
Yeah.
In addition, it will have an automatic cover,
Oh, good.
so.
All right.
And the keys is inside the home to open the automatic cover.
Good.
Despite the fact it's abutting the environmental corridor, have you thought about putting maybe some tall grasses or something along the bottom bottom wall?
The whole
fence?
bottom area is going to be natural grass.
Yep.
So it's, okay,
Yeah, we just want, they can't cut it.
No.
yeah, okay, all right, good.
Yeah.
It just shows it's a manicured,
Yeah, no, it's.
okay. I know you can only do so much in a 3D model.
Yeah, everything's going to be natural grass.
Okay, all right. All right, for what it's worth, when we were approving this subdivision, I think Dan and, I think it was you, when I was sitting over there, we both kind of picked this lot out as one, like, this looks like the lot I'd want.
It was the.
And I envisioned that house, not the pool and the walls, but I envisioned that house right there. You got a great view, but,
Wendy and I bought it initially.
what's that?
My wife and I bought it
Oh,
initially.
okay. Well,
and we decided
you
not
didn't
to
beat me
move.
to it, I wasn't in the market, but it
Yeah, it's
just
a
looked
nice
like a
lot.
great, knowing the topography. I wouldn't have done that to the hill, but, as long as it's done well, it's a different kind of beautiful than I had in mind, but,
Thanks. You'll be able to visit it.
okay.
With a swimsuit?
Drive by.
Well, he probably looks good with a swimsuit.
I have my moments. All right, any other questions or?
I think so. Okay.
Only thing I would recommend is, unless people object to it, is to add the requirement to get the approval of the property owner. Because it's, my view is we're making an exception, I think, to the normal code, and I think the property rights, so the owner to the right has an interest in a 7-foot wall. So, to me, that would be something, if they said fine, and then it's up to them.
I have no problem approaching Victory. I would have a problem if they denied it, and it's already within our jurisdiction that it would be allowed.
Well, I don't think it is in the jurisdiction to be allowed.
5 foot, 5 inches off.
Right, well, okay, so then, well, my opinion would be that if I were gonna buy that property, I would wanna know whether or not I wanted to have to be next to a 7-foot wall. Whether, now, that's all, so.
Are you proposing landscaping to soften the look of the 7-foot-high wall?
Absolutely, Scott.
Okay. What about on top of the wall, because it's retaining like the driveway as you approach the side load garage, could someone back off that?
Excuse me?
Could someone fall off that 7-foot wall?
The railing does extend up to the highest part of it, and from there it tapers down. There's a little bit of a green space between the retaining wall and where the asphalt is, but it's tight to back the vehicles up, so it's pretty minimal. So to answer your question, yeah, if somebody walks over to it and is not careful, like any other retaining wall, you can't go off that. Anywhere between a foot down to, say, 5 feet. I think nothing more than 5 feet before you hit the rail.
Can you just extend the fence, or would that look funny? Or
Well,
the
the fence
rail?
that goes up on the side where it's 7 feet tall, the other parts that are like 4.5 feet, well, there too, there's plantings in front of the majority of that. There's only a couple of places where we're not putting planting, that's right in front of, because behind the pool, all the way across the back, that's all gonna be planting. And when you get to the bottom of the stair, there's planting there too. It's not depicted clearly on our site plan, but the space that's right in front of where the hot tub is, those two corners do not have plantings in them right now, because that's where my drain, one of my drains is located. But there it's down 4.5 feet. Actually, that layer looks like it might be closer to 5. No, 4.
There's no lip, there's no like wall curb on top?
It's actually pretty flat. The top of the foundation wall is going to be set at the grades that I have. The stone cap will be the part that you see that sticks up.
Well, I'm prepared to make a motion, but I would include the requirement to get the neighbor's agreement or acquiescence.
Scott, can I just make a recommendation, because you don't know what their comments will be, or if they're, what their concern would be based on, if they had concern, that perhaps they get written approval.
Okay?
And if there is an objection, that come back to Plan Commission then for consideration versus just taking the word of the neighbor of a denial, like just.
Makes sense.
That's something for you to then consider their concerns?
Yeah, I like that. So I'll make the motion that we approve pursuant to the Planning Commissioner's recommendations relative to the engineers, as well as getting written approval from the neighbor on, I think it's the north, south side of the building.
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
Just make sure that the motion does have, in case the other owner of the lot does say no, that it would come back here for reconsideration.
I think that's understood.
Yeah, very, very reasonable request.
All right.
All right, more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Okay, thank you, good luck. Okay, moving right along. Item 10M, DLC 0800999008, 1550 Indian Spring Drive, owner Greg and John Heyman, applicant Greg Heyman. Applicants requesting feedback regarding a proposed land division that will result in a flag lot. So this is feedback.
Yes. Thank you for your patience. This is one of our longer meetings. Okay, so the applicant currently owns a 9.46 acre property in the southwest corner of Indian Springs Drive, where it takes a 90-degree turn. The applicant would like to split the property into two, and unfortunately, because the code requires 5 acres for lots that are served by a septic system, they are shy a half of an acre in order to split the property in two. So the applicant did approach both adjacent properties to the south to acquire additional acreage. They did get enough acreage to meet the 10-acre requirement. However, I mean, there's a couple issues with that. The land that they are acquiring from is directly south where Audley Creek must have been dammed up somehow in order to create a little bit of a pond. And we would, so if he is able to move forward, we would need to consult with the DNR, because if that pond is considered a navigable lake, then he doesn't actually own under the bed and he's going to lose acreage. However, usually, sometimes when it's really small like that and it's part of a riverine system, they still just consider it part of the river, and then they do actually own to the bottom of the lake. But it can be accessible to the public, if that makes sense. So that would be determined by the DNR. And then the applicant also approached the property to like the southeast in order to have enough frontage on Indian Springs Road. So normally you have to have enough, well, the required lot width is 200 feet, and you have to have that lot width at the right-of-way of the road. If you don't have that lot width, then it's considered a flag lot. And the ordinance does state that flag lots should be avoided whenever possible, particularly in residential areas, and flag lots are prohibited unless the staff of the flag has street frontage not less than the lot width required in the zoning district in which the lot is located. And so they do not have the 200 feet of road frontage. They were working with that adjacent property, and they did come to an agreement, but then that property owner did ask for additional money that then became impractical to the applicant, is my understanding. So rather than submitting, there is a certified survey map in the packet that shows the 2 lots being 5 acres, assuming they own the bed of Audley Creek, but only having a 66-foot strip along Indian Spring Drive versus the 200 that's required. And he is looking for feedback before he has a full review done in order to save costs in the event it's not approved.
Okay, I know the history of Audrey Creek from someone who actually grew up in this area and owned land over there. It's the creek starts somewhere just to the west of Lappy
Let's talk
Road.
about the feedback on the, we understand the issue with the pond is that he loses
Yeah.
acreage if he doesn't, not
Right.
included. We don't really need to know the history. I appreciate that you know it, but in the interest of time, I don't know. We
It
need no more.
actually does belong to them.
Okay, I mean, I'm just saying, we understand the issue with the acreage, whether they
Okay.
get it or not. I'm just saying, I don't know how.
I think with this one, maybe by definition, it's a flag lot, but I have a hard time calling this a flag lot. There's no stem or pole.
Hockey stick.
And yeah, I live 2 properties south of here. I just can't
I agree.
see this as a flag lot.
There actually is a driveway there at the base,
Yeah,
at the bottom of the slope where this is
I
going.
believe that
Did
driveway's
you
on
have a
the
chance
other
to?
property.
Did
Yeah.
you have a chance to introduce yourself?
I have not.
Okay, please do.
My name's Greg Hireman. I live at West 297 North 931 Kingsway in the town of Delafield. My brother and I own this property at 1550 Indian Springs. My brother John is here tonight. He's deaf, and my wife is interpreting for him. But there is a driveway down there now.
Yes.
That the house sits on top of the hill on Indian Springs where it goes east and west. And the side lot, Indian Springs makes a sharp right turn, goes down the hill that runs along the property line. And there are 2 pole buildings at the base of the hill that are accessible from a driveway on that north-south portion. When we purchased the land, we learned that that driveway actually crosses the neighbor's property and there is no easement. So we were trying to resolve this easement issue initially with the neighbor, and we had come up with, in the negotiation process, I thought we had a number in mind, and then it drastically changed once we did the survey work and things. So I'm trying to resolve this short of having a gun held to my head and having to pay what I think is an unfair amount of money for a small piece, a sliver, really. If you look at it, it's a sliver. The road curves off to the left, and we're talking about a very tight pie-shaped piece of land at that point. I would like to say, when we purchased this land, the county tax assessor said that we own 10.274 acres. But the city said that we own only 9.54 or something like that. And in checking on how can there be a difference, we checked with the county, and they said, well, this is the number that the city reported to us, which was the 10.274. But the city says, no, you only have 9.5. In talking to our surveyor, his father did a lot of surveying in this neighborhood, and originally Indian Springs was a private road.
Right.
But the city maintained that private road. Eventually, the city just assumed responsibility for the road and took over the property, but never, it was never deeded properly. And therefore, it wasn't recorded properly with the county. So we've been paying taxes on 10.274 acres, when in actuality, it's 9.5. Not just us, but everybody else in the neighborhood as well. So we thought that we had over 10 acres. When we learned that we didn't, then we entered into an agreement with the Ritzes. And so, you know, our intention is, my brother's going to live in the house up on the hill. My wife and I are going to build a house down below. You know, bring an additional $1 million in taxes to the community because we're going to build a nice house. We just need to use the 66 feet of frontage to come in on our driveway. And, you know, we're trying to improve the quality and the tax base for the city. And, you know, being that my brother's deaf, we're in a position to help him living in close proximity. So I respectfully request that the city approve a flag lot for us. It's nothing extraordinary. And from that corner point, what's the reason that they're requiring 200 feet of frontage? I can only assume that it's because they don't want driveway after driveway after driveway after driveway. This access driveway to our pole buildings that crosses the neighbor's land is the only driveway from where the road turns up by the freeway down to your driveway, which is over half a mile. This is the only driveway that comes in off that side of the road.
Right.
So it's not like we're going to be overtaxing the area with multiple driveways or ingress.
Yeah, that's not the only reason. Some of it is where people are trying to achieve density that wasn't either desired or contemplated at the time when lots were established. I mean, that's certainly one of them as well, where you could have some consolidation of properties in people's backyards and develop a new lot, and just all of a sudden now you get a new home.
Sure.
So there's other reasons than just intensity.
And part of the requirement of the 5 acre minimum over there, most of my neighbors around me, probably 75%, have less than 5 acre lots. Because that was the original when they originally.
That's septic too, and that's.
And then they changed it. So, furthermore.
I don't think we can help you on the 5 acres for septic.
I understand. I think we resolved that portion, but the neighbors to the west of me and the neighbors to the south of me have shared driveways. There's 3 homes coming in off of one driveway. They don't have 200 feet of frontage.
Okay, well, so now you're, just for what it's worth, since this is a discussion and, right, you're looking for
I know,
feedback. My perception of what you're describing is whether or not what you're proposing would fit in with the character of the neighborhood. And that's something that does weigh heavily on what we have to decide when we're looking at exceptions or changes to the rule. So all that information is really helpful, I think. And does anyone else have, I mean, but I find that helpful to understand that
I just have.
there's some legacy situations with the neighborhood that some are conforming, some aren't. People are sharing driveways, you know.
Well, this was platted in the 60s.
Yeah.
The late 60s, the subdivision was platted. So I have 3 acres. There's a lot of them that are maybe 2.75. That's true. But he's also right, and I do feel this fits in with the nature of the community because there are very few driveways up and down Indian Spring Drive. And large lots, 18 acres, 6 acres.
Yeah, to the west.
I'm trying to sort out really number one, what a flag lot is and how it resolves this dispute as to who has ownership of this corner. I'm totally perplexed. Does anybody?
Well, I can just tell you what the ordinance says.
But as far as enabling this, don't you still have the same problem with the driveway
We would
access?
move it.
Okay, he's
That
going to move the driveway into the 66 feet.
By being able to bring the driveway in that 66 feet, we would eliminate that other driveway and it would resolve our ingress-egress problem with the lack of easement.
Are you proposing a shared, is your future plan include a shared driveway then? Is that, or you have a different driveway for this property? I can't.
No, the main house would,
Oh, you already have a drive that goes to the corner?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
You're just moving the
So it-
southern driveway
Understood.
that's not used,
Cutting the 10 acres in half and adding a driveway.
Okay.
moving a driveway. You're basically eliminating the one that's further south.
Correct.
And then putting in that driveway on the northern end of it
Resolving that easement issue.
through the 66 feet.
Yeah.
So why does he need a flag lot designation to do that?
He
That's
doesn't
what it
need it.
is.
It's a technical definition, but it qualifies as a flag lot, which, just because of the technical definition, we're not allowing a flag lot, is what we're saying. This qualifies as a flag lot, but it's more of a technicality than it is really.
Are-
This doesn't look like
Scott,
a
are
flag
you
lot.
aware of the geometry of a flag lot?
No.
It's got a long pole and then it comes out.
Like a
So it might
hotcakes.
be a lot behind a lot.
I see,
And it's got a long driveway coming in. That would be the pole of the flag.
I see, okay.
If you could look at this as though it's not a corner lot, if that
Mm-hmm.
was only frontage on the north side by the freeway, and he was looking to divide this in half and stick a house in the back by putting a 20-foot easement along the whole side of it,
Got it.
That'd be a flag.
That
that's what
a
that would
flag
be.
lot, Right.
Yeah.
So I can show you on GIS here, so we don't, the city doesn't issue flag lots often, but a couple of years ago, because this area is so unique, there were a couple of flag lots approved. So I'm gonna highlight, if you continue down Indian Spring Drive, and then you go east on Sunset View Drive, I actually don't know how they really access these properties. There's 2 flag lots that got approved in like 2020. The
That's up in
Ritter
the-
property has a flag to the south, and then the Chugum property has a flag that extends to Hillside Drive. And I believe that one was approved because there were even more lots that were legal lots that were created a
Yeah,
long time
that
ago.
decreased density.
And they decreased the density as part of their submittal.
Didn't we also get a trail through there or something?
It's
And-
there.
and there
yeah.
was a trail.
Finally
And then-
got the trail.
Yeah.
There's
Public
another
trail.
flag lot-ish to the south of those that's very unique. So there is a little bit of a pattern in this
Well,
particular.
there's actually one off of Indian Spring Drive too. If you want to go up the hill, okay, and then move
Yeah.
the cursor.
Most of those
There's
are up on the
2 or
hill.
3 lots served.
way?
Nope, you went too far.
You got to go east.
Yeah, there's a driveway that,
Yeah.
right at butting this property, there's a drive that serves, yeah, there
Oh,
you go.
these.
Yeah, they serve, there's one drive there that serves 3 properties, I believe.
Well, those aren't even flag lots. Those are just lots not abutting a public road.
It's not a public road, that's a driveway.
That's what I mean. They're not even flags because there's not a thin strip. They're just lots that do not abut a public road.
That's
You
true.
know what I mean?
That gotta be easement, there must be,
So what would be the city's interest for this property or in general with this approach? Pro or con?
I think for what I would probably look at is, so I kind of struggled with whether or not this was a flag lot myself because he is right up against the road, but if you do read the definition, it does meet the definition. Is the precedent that it's being set? Like, is it unique enough and can you define it specifically to this property where you're not setting a precedent in other areas of the city? And is it compatible with the neighborhood?
Okay, but it sounds like your exercise just suggests it is compatible with this neighborhood.
I mean, that would be up to your interpretation. There's certainly examples of in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah. Seeing there's no driveway within 200
I-
feet of it.
I would say that's the major concern is how you rationalize this subdivision when we've said no to many like them. But not like this corner lot with all this street frontage, this is a unique situation, but these are things that need to be, that's why Amy didn't give them a hard no, I think, and said, come talk to us. So it's,
You know, the uniqueness could be that a driveway is already established in the same location. They're
We're
making
just trying to move it.
conforming, if you want to approve it. I mean, that would be a unique factor. There is going to be another one coming in in another area. And I know it's not on this agenda, I just want you to know, you will see yet another one, which is also unique.
I think the fact that there is a driveway there, this one will move it north, and that there's no stem or pole to the flag, geometrically, I have a hard time calling this a flag lot. Technically, I understand.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment.
And you think it's compatible with the surrounding neighbors?
Yes.
They're all big lots.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really kind of an isolated area, too, because it's a big kettle.
And I promise I won't put up any fences that are over 6 feet.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I live in the neighborhood.
So just real quickly, do you anticipate, I guess, anybody, a precedent being,
If we approve this, to try to define some characteristics as to why, and if those same characteristics is what somebody brings in, we would approve it. And if those characteristics are different,
Agree.
we can say, doesn't work.
That type of decision, I mean, that you don't codify that ebbs and flows with the people that are up here.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with everything that's being said. When I know of one flag lot that aside from that one on the hill, so those were unique circumstances up behind Target, right? Where we were lowering density and we enabled a path to go through. So that's one. I remember another one so I'm glad we approved that when I was on the Plan Commission as a voting member. But there's one that we approved that I wish we didn't. We wouldn't have. And it's blatantly a flag lot. It was up by St. Joan of Arc.
So just, tell me if this is an unfair question for you, Tim, but how do you view this one compared to those two other examples?
Well, it's unique, right? So the geometry, I think, is something that you have to consider as far as, and, the impact on the roadway and the density. I mean, it's all really the character of the neighborhood. But, we had a rather contentious one not too long ago that just got rectified with a lot of gymnastics with real estate transactions between three properties. We was initially brought in, and it had it was definitely a flag lot, and it had a reasonable amount of street frontage, but it didn't end up with two square lots. Like, there's almost going to end up with two square lots. What the legal solution to it was, after he did some purchasing and horse trading with different properties, was some odd trapezoidal lots that ended up sort of making sense, and we approved it just the last 2 months ago.
Oh, I recall that one.
That's
Yeah.
a good example. I think
Yeah.
this one's even a better circumstance than that one. It doesn't have that tight angle that one had.
Yeah, okay.
So these are things we just have to think carefully about, and that's why you're here, is for us to talk these through. I'd be very hesitant to approve it personally, but I would expect that I would expect this, whatever. I like his chances, let me put it that way.
So this is just feedback.
This is just feedback, yeah.
I'm all right with it.
Yeah, I'm fine,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, me too.
Same here.
I'd likely vote no if I was voting, but like I said,
You don't vote.
people win, people win split decisions all the time. So. But is there anything else you think we can help them out with, Amy? Or
What about you two? Just before he's going to come back next month with this formal certified survey map, and in the meantime, that will require surveyor review, my review, and so he just doesn't want to incur those costs if he will run into a problem.
I think I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it.
Still has to get over the hurdle of the creek.
yeah, make sure the acreage is there. I don't think we don't control that, do we? Isn't that a sewer pack?
DNR.
Yeah.
Well, it was a man-made pond years back.
Yep.
And the Ritzes and us share that pond. The property line runs across, and we're paying taxes on the land underneath the pond.
Yeah.
So
And Laura,
Which is
you
in
can
your
consult with
favor,
Laura about the
which is in
history
your
too.
favor,
Yeah,
by the
you
way.
can consult with me.
Well, Yeah, it's-
The neighbor kids used to go fishing there because it used
You
to
have
have
a lake in
fish.
your
The
backyard.
neighbor kids by me used to go fishing there when they were kids, and they would catch fish.
Just
My grandkids love fishing there.
Yeah.
don't tell the DNR there's water on the lake.
All right, is this
Try.
good?
That's right.
Actually, that whole
We
area.
can chat for a while, but
drains
is this
towards
good for him to go? All right,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
good deal.
Terrific.
Thanks.
Then we'll be back with the CSMs next month. Thank you.
All right. Item 11, now finally we get something the city applied for, right?
Yes.
Okay, comprehensive plan zoning and ordinance revision. This is why we had a public hearing. Everyone on board? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, 11A, discussion action regarding a request of the City of Delafield Plan Commission to amend the text of Chapter 52, City of Delafield zoning ordinance, specifically Article 5 and Article 9, as well as Section 5222 and Section 52295, and possible other sections related to topics specified in this notice in order to convert planned unit development planned developments from a conditional use permit to an overlay district, as well as other minor amendments to the planned unit development or planned development provisions. All right. And
Okay.
I know we've talked through this, but
We've talked
quick
through
one.
this. The only thing I just want to bring up is, so at the last meeting, I believe I mentioned that I had to do a cross-reference to make sure that we were cleaning up the plan unit conditional use throughout the entire code. So it is in a couple of other places, and that is incorporated into the draft ordinance and the newest red line version. There's a section in the navigable water frontage and access restrictions that refers to a conditional use permit in conjunction with the plan development, so I struck that out. And then I removed the references of to plan developments in the Article 5 conditional use section of the code. And then you've got your Article 9, which is the plan development PDO section. That, you've seen that language. I didn't make any changes to that. And then there is, under public hearing and notices, I just added that the exterior notice requirements be measured from the extreme limits of the governmental conditional use or plan development boundary, because it's not a conditional use anymore, but you do want to notify everybody within the entire boundary of whatever that plan development ends up being. That makes sense. And then whatever motion you make, it is subject to attorney review. Sometimes he tweaks the form of the amendments.
And it's a recommendation to council to pass this, right?
Just to alleviate any questions about this, I know the answer, but I want to make sure that others know. This PUD will still follow the underlying zoning.
Well, so just like a conditional use, you start with the underlying zoning.
Right.
But you have the ability to provide flexibility if they meet certain standards. So there is flexibility offered, just like Nagawicca Heights and Hawthorne Farm. They have smaller lot sizes, smaller setbacks, because
But
they
it's still
offer-
residential. That's what I'm going
Oh,
for. The
yes.
underlying zoning,
The
if it's
use.
zoned for residential or it's zoned commercial or whatever, you follow that, but they're just able to move things around.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that people are aware of that, because some people don't quite understand
Sure.
how this mix happens.
Good question.
Otherwise, I read it, the whole thing, I thought it was well-written. I liked the fact that you took things out that, were unnecessary and simplified it. I rather like it, and I would definitely approve it.
And then we tweaked the open space, common open space. We struck public or private walkways from not being included as common open space.
Okay.
So it is included.
So what do we think? Anyone want to move on this?
There's a recommended motion in my staff report.
I'll make a motion.
Nope.
He's looking for it.
Oh, go for
All
it.
right, I'll make a motion. Recommend Common Council adopt the enclosed ordinance that repeals and recreates portions of Chapter 52 of the City of Delafield zoning ordinance, specifically Sections 52-22A, subsection 1, 52-136, 52-142, Section 6, Article 9, and Section 52-295, subsection 2, related to the planned unit planned developments, subject to city attorney review.
And I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, so that'll end up going to the Common Council. The last item on number 11 is 11B, discussion action regarding request of staff to amend the text of Chapter 52 City of Delafield zoning ordinance regarding tobacco shops as permitted use in several districts and certain conditional uses that are permitted in Section 52-142, specifically as they relate to restrictions for drive-through windows in the CBD 1 district and community and other group living arrangements. And by staff, it means me, so I'm the one who just came up with a few different things since we're on the topic of conditional uses and what kind of gets quick approval and where we've given up some latitude where I think we should have more control on a couple of these things.
I want to ask a little bit about the tobacco shops. Is it very specific what they can sell? Not that we get someone coming in want to sell CBD, vaping stuff and that.
So we had that application in Village Square that was denied. As staff, we discussed a definition for a tobacco shop for quite some time. It gets pretty challenging. So as at least a temporary extended control, I think the idea of just using cigar shop gave you a little bit more control to decide what that means. It doesn't mean a tobacco or vaping place, it means a cigar shop. So the place on
83.
by Target,
Yeah.
you know, that would be a cigar shop. If somebody had a facility where a majority of the space was cigar sales, it would be probably considered a cigar shop. But if it's a vape store and paraphernalia, I think that this would give you the ability to say, no, it doesn't meet.
Because I know that in Waukesha, there are shops that sell tobacco and
Cigars. Yeah, I
well,
just
not
think
just
it
cigars,
gives-
but they sell vape stuff and
Oh,
all
yeah.
that.
So it just gives you a little bit more control. CBD oil is a lot trickier because there's actually a lot of places that sell CBD oil.
Yeah.
Places that you may all go to, and I mean, chiropractors, salons. I mean, there's a lot of places that will sell it now. And actually, there's several stores downtown that sell it. You've got I don't think the herbal apothecary sells it. She said she doesn't sell CBD oils, but there's even just retail stores will have a section of it.
And there's people that swear by that, some of that stuff
Yeah.
for treatment, and it works for some people. But the concern that was raised is just vaping as a health hazard and
Yes.
limiting access to it in a reasonable way is kind of one of the goals of
Yeah.
just trying to narrow this down to an established permitted use in certain districts is right now tobacco shop, and that has a really broad definition. A cigar shop, it's more open to a select interpretation specific to what a cigar is, and not what all tobacco products are derivatives.
Yeah.
It's a tricky situation. It's just,
I was just wondering if we had done anything with that.
it's a thought, and it says discussion and action. Let's just touch on these because we didn't announce this as an item to schedule the public hearing, even though it's in the notes.
Yeah.
So we'll just talk, just give it maybe a highlight on this and revisit it next month and set up public hearings for these.
Yeah.
I can explain briefly the other one for community residential facilities. There are state statutes about when we're compelled to allow them and when we reach a certain limit. We don't necessarily have to by state standards anymore, but our code currently says that we will, or we do. Like we'll just, like they're allowed. I think I'm just suggesting we change that language to, they apply for it and we can waive the cap if we want to.
Yeah.
So that would give us the control over when we do or do not permit more group facilities.
Yeah. are they relegated to certain areas?
No, they're anywhere in the city.
Anywhere.
Yeah, but, so right now, right now, the city, by state statutes, we have our portion that we should have. And there's good reasons for those laws.
Yeah, well,
It's
yeah.
not, I'm not saying we limit it or cap it, I'm saying that when we add more, we want it to be for a good reason, and not just because our current ordinances say, because you applied, you get it if you meet these conditions.
Right.
We want to say, well, should we waive the cap or not? And right now, we automatically do.
Thank you for that information.
Tim,
I appreciate it.
I'm just curious, I don't remember hearing any discussion around cap when it related to the 7 Cs, that whole issue, when they were going to put in a senior living.
When that came in, the code actually didn't really have any, it was
Okay,
allowed
so
in any
this is new.
district
Okay, all right.
without conditions.
Yeah, and the other, so there's good information in here and just something to mull over before our next meeting. What was the other one?
Drive-through windows.
Yeah, drive-through windows, where they're appropriate or not. I thought it was odd that we have drive-through windows in CBD1 for restaurants. I don't think that's necessarily in our best interest to have those as an approved conditional use. I don't know why we'd want a drive-up window downtown here.
Yeah.
So Amy brought up.
Would that include banks, maybe?
No, so that came up too. So that's separate, it's a separate use, but specific to
Or
restaurants.
you'd want to,
And then there's some what's the other?
So the provision that's being proposed to change is titled drive-through for restaurants, so it is specific to restaurants. So CBD1 was one to potentially remove from, but they're also allowed in B1 and B1A. And those are also your more neighborhood commercial districts, just not necessarily downtown. So I just looked at the zoning map to see where they exist, and like Kurt's Steakhouse and the property to the east of that are zone B1. And then there's some B1 zoning just west of Dopkins Street next to 705 Genesee Street. And then there's B1 by Village Square on Vettleson, not the Pick and Save area, that's all B6, but there's a few properties. Oh, well, like the garage that came in, he owns a residence and then has an outbuilding. There's a couple properties like that that are really residential in nature, but those are all zone B1. And then there's a little bit of the area by Target is B1 that has the office buildings on the north side of, is that Heritage?
yeah.
North side, and then, I think actually Johnson Bank and Quick Trip oddly are, no, I'm sorry, those are B2. So just the north side of Heritage Drive.
The Lang
Do we have
buildings?
anybody with a
Or
drive-through?
south side of Heritage Drive, south side,
yeah,
sorry.
south.
Do we have anybody in one of those districts now that has a drive-through that was approved?
No.
No.
Okay, so we're not getting ourselves into trouble by saying, hey, wait a minute.
No, it's really just too, if, my big question was, why would we allow them? I just saw it as a designation, and I was looking for,
CBD1.
like, approved uses in certain districts, and I saw drive-throughs in CBD1. That would be counter to really what we're trying to control, so.
Right.
But something to read over, and we'll bring it back up in our next meeting. This one's been long enough, right?
Yeah, think about CBD1's probably pretty straightforward, but think about the B1. If we're gonna touch the code, we should consider all the districts.
All right. So
That's it. So
next, 12, reports of city officials. Correspondence, look in the pack. I don't think there is any. Planner.
I think I've talked enough today.
Okay, Scott.
I don't have much to report, except that we're busy. We're busy building.
All right.
That's good.
That's good. And awesome, new neighbors and friends, right? 13, Plan Commission meeting dates and deadlines. Regular meeting is June 26, 2024, and regular meeting submittal deadline is May 29th, 2024. Seeing no further business, we are now adjourned at 9:29 PM. Thank you, everybody.